everyone. We are back. This is Luke here, and this is Top Pins with Twins as well. Paul, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, Luke. It has been a minute since we've done an FPL pod. We've been, for those of you that don't know, we live in Florida, and we've had back-to-back hurricanes in 2.5 weeks, essentially. So things have been a little disjointed. We've been evacuating. We've been running around, but we're back in our home. Everything's good, and we're so excited to talk about some FPL. At least I am. I don't know about you, Luke.
Oh, you don't have to question my excitement for FPL. I think that's always top notch.
I was just making sure you still had a pulse. That's really what it was, you know.
I'm alive, doing well, and excited to be talking about FPL here. It's been a second, like you're saying, Paul, since we've been able to be back on the pod. So we're really looking forward to having this conversation with you all, and kind of sharing our thoughts on what we think is upcoming for FPL and talk about how our teams performed in Game Week 7. So without further ado, let's get into it. What we're going to do this episode is do a little review for you all in Game Week 7. We're going to talk about Game Week 8 and make transfers for the other person's team, which is something new we haven't done on the pod yet. It's a really kind of new, exciting idea that we're going to try out and just see how that goes. So if you're listening, give us your thoughts on how you think that goes. But without further ado, as I previously just said, we're going to dive into Game Week 7. So, Paul, tell everyone how you did in Game Week 7.
Yeah, so Game Week 7 was the best game week of my 2024-2025.
Also, doesn't it feel like it was like 5 months ago at this point?
Oh, it feels like it was a lifetime ago, honestly. It realistically
It truly does.
So, I don't know. So I ended up on 68 points. My star performers were Saka and Havertz. So the Arsenal boys put in a shift for the club. Let me tell you, my team's name is Kai's Kingdom. So it really does make sense that he's in my team and starting in my team.
Kai did get a bit fortunate with that goal. Although, they played Southampton, right? This might have been even too long ago.
No, you're talking about the one that was at the death against Leicester.
You're right. Sorry. It's been so long. Sorry.
Luke,
My apologies.
Just to clarify.
Yeah.
Last week against Southampton was when he scored that banger where he took it
Gotcha.
from,
Yep.
across the box and hit it
Bent
off the
it around
post.
off the post. Okay. Understood.
So that, and then Saka with 16 points. Saka had 16 points. Havertz had 8. I captained Havertz. So if I would have captained Saka, it would have been a generational week for me, honestly.
Oh, that would have been great.
It would have been great. But I also had Bowen, who really finally came good in my team.
He did. Yeah, that was kind of a surprising result, 4-1. I think Ipswich has been pretty good this season, but it seemed like they had a lot of flaws exposed during that match against West Ham.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is I know that on this podcast we had pretty high expectations for West Ham going into this year, and they've been those hopes were not met by what West Ham done so far this year. So we kind of got a glimpse of what we thought West Ham could have been like. So hopefully they keep that rolling. And I had a clean sheet from Wout Phase. Yeah, I think I said his name right. But clean sheet against Bournemouth,
that's a pretty jammy clean sheet.
I'll take it though. I'll take it. And then it sucks that Arsenal didn't have a clean sheet because I have Calafiori in the back. And the biggest thing about my game week, sorry to cut you off, Luke, I had 3 points on my bench, so no repeats of last year.
That's a big win for you there, Paul. So the XG conceded though for Leicester was pretty high. Leicester ended up conceding an XG of 2.16 to Bournemouth and ended up keeping the clean sheet. So you'll take it, right?
But sometimes numbers lie.
The numbers worked in your favor this time, is what happened. I think.
Let's hear about your team though.
I had a pretty decent week. I had ended up on 51 points. My top performer for the week was Brian Mbomo. He got the goal, and it was really strange. Brentford scored 5 goals, and he only gets 1 penalty goal. You would think there would be an assist in there or another goal perhaps, but hey, well, he's consistently ticking away at the point, so I'm pretty happy with him at the moment, just hoping to get that big kind of really nice and big return sometime in the near future is what I'm hoping for.
I think you will. Brentford are a fun team this year.
They're
kind of back, you know.
And going into Game Week 7, I made the transfer of bringing Brennan Johnson for Eze. Got sick of having Eze in the team. Just really at that point, I was fed up of him not returning with all the chances he's had in the past. So brought in Johnson. He gets the goal. And there was a moment in the beginning of the match where Timo Werner is played in on the left side, tries to play the cross to Brennan
This is
Johnson.
30 seconds into the
30
match.
seconds into the match, and he doesn't square it properly to him. And I will say, Timo Werner gets a really hard time. So I don't want to be piling on to a player who is struggling to find form in that right Premier League home for him. But that was very frustrating in that moment, because if Brennan Johnson gets a goal in the first 30 seconds with the form he's in, he probably would have gotten a brace or even more than that, right?
I mean, it's possible.
But it's hard to say, because the goal that Johnson did end up getting probably wouldn't have happened if Tottenham do score that first goal, because game state completely changes throughout the course of the match. So no, I'm just glad he got the goal. That was a good transfer in. Didn't take a hit to get him in either, and I'm really excited to have him going forward. Solanke returned, Havertz returned, and I also got a clean sheet from Trent and a very jammy Rico Lewis assist. Sorry, I flipped the letters there. Rico Lewis assist.
They all count. You can't say jammy, whatever. It's still an assist, right?
Still an assist. My team ended up doing pretty good. Ended up being Green Arrow. At this point, I'm just happy to have a Green Arrow with the way my season's gone up to this point in time. But I'm also very optimistic about how my team looks going forward.
There's a good pivot from there for you.
With that note, how about we go into your recommended transfers for my team, Paul?
Yeah, so we're Luke's team was one that, honestly, as he was saying at this point, his team looks really good going into game week 8 and also going forward. So I kind of had my work cut out for me, and I got a little differential and a little, I don't know. I think there's one transfer I really, really like that I made in your team. The other one I think is a good transfer too. But
I will say, quick caveat, right? With what Paul's saying here, I've been making transfers for the mindset of bringing in players for the long haul, where they're going to be in my team with good fixtures. That's why I brought in Mbomo. That's why I brought in Johnson. That's why I brought in Rico Lewis. All these players and, Spurs assets, right? I had Solanke, I just held him. Foden, holding him for the long term. So all of those were intentionally held so that I could get to this point where they really hit good fixtures. And with that preamble, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, so basically, like Luke said, a lot of those players he mentioned, Rico Lewis, Phil Foden, Brennan Johnson, and Mbomo, Haaland especially, are players that I did not want to touch in his team. Like, they are not coming out. They're not going anywhere. So looking at his team, I noticed that he had Trent Alexander-Arnold, who I took out of his team.
Okay, I do like that. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I took Trent out, and I brought in Romero.
So that would be going into Game Week 8. So I'd be making that transfer this week.
Yes, it would be this week.
And they're playing West Ham. Is it at London Stadium?
I'm pretty sure it's at, I think the Spurs are hosting the Hammers.
Yes, they are. Yep. Yeah. So it's going to be at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
That's kind of a dual transfer, because, I kind of like pivots in FPL. Sometimes they go against the grain, And I think people, after seeing the performance against Brighton, are going to say, I do not want a Spurs asset. And at this time, I really do think that Romero is a better FPL option than Pedro Porro. I think he's the Spurs asset to target defense.
So you think that Romero's better than Van de Ven as an FPL asset?
Honestly, I know Van de Ven's had a couple assists.
And on top of that, he's 0.6, 0.5 cheaper?
That's correct. You bring up valid points. But the thing about Romero that I really like is that there are moments where Spurs like to play him as a pseudo 9. And also on corners, he's kind of like, if I were going to pick a quote-unquote Gabriel for the Spurs team, where they're always, like, they're trying to get Romero into scoring opportunities on their corners.
Right.
And, set-piece delivery probably could be better for Spurs at this point in time. But at the end of the day, I don't know. I think he's been knocking on the door for a goal. He seems like a good option. The run going forward, West Ham is maybe a little tough for them.
I think West Ham will be a good fixture for them.
I think it could be. As a Bowen owner, I'm like, that's a little iffy. But also, like, they play West Ham, Crystal Palace, who we all know have been so disappointing so far this year, and then Villa, which is a little different, and then Ipswich though. Like, I do like those fixtures for Spurs though. I really do.
And that's why I brought in Johnson with the form that he's in and how he's been scoring goals. if you watch the way Tottenham play, Johnson's not overly involved with. He's not James Madison, right? James Madison's at the heart of their attacking. So is Kulusevski as well. But the positions he takes up, he's always in that space where he's running in behind to take a touch and take a shot, right? And that's kind of what it seems like he's almost mastered to an extent, is taking that shot quick and hard past the keeper to the far post. And that's really all he's needed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even to this point in his career, he has the pace to get behind defenders. He just needs that finishing touch, and he's found that as of late. So hopefully he continues that trend.
Yeah, and so after this, that kind of gave me a little more budget to work with, going from Trent to Romero, and I really want to bring in Dwight McNeil to your team.
Who would you bring him in for?
Rogers.
Morgan Rogers. I really like Villa's fixtures though.
I mean, so they play Fulham, Bournemouth, Tottenham, and Liverpool. Like, if we're just looking at the next three,
But look at the fixtures after that though.
I mean, yeah, you have Tottenham, Liverpool, Crystal Palace, Chelsea.
But they even get better. So around game week 12, I think they have one of the best runs going forward after that.
No, they absolutely do.
So that's my
so,
thing. I get what you're saying.
They do, Luke. But I mean, like, if we're looking at the next 5 fixtures, like that, I mean, those are even Fulham is, I don't think, a great matchup for Villa. Like, I really don't think it is. I think Fulham have really kind of changed how they play this year without Polina, and they're pushing teams. And look what they did to City. I mean, they there's no question. They should have beat City at home. They should have beat them at the empty head. Sorry, I misspoke.
My thing about Fulham, I think they are set up to give bigger teams problems. But I think in a match where they play Villa, I think that's a match they'll probably go for it. And they'll play a little more open. Like Smith Rowe, he's not going to be benched in that match against Villa.
Yeah, I also
they're going to be
wanna
more
see-
attacking.
I want to see Reece Nelson start some matches.
You would think he would, but Iwobi is someone who gives them more control over a match. He doesn't have the
Yeah.
pace or maybe, the ability with the ball at his feet like he used to when he was younger that Nelson now does.
Mm-hmm.
But he does offer a lot of match control, and I think Marco Silva likes that a lot.
Okay. But also, Luke, to bring back up Dwight McNeil,
Yeah.
we know that he is an XG overperformer. He
Without
is.
a doubt.
He's going to score goals on chances that are outside the box, that are hard to score, and that's just kind of how Everton have to score goals. But he's really going to be involved with Calvert-Lewin. And we look at the run of fixtures. They play Ipswich, Fulham, Southampton, West Ham, and Brentford.
You know what Dwight McNeil reminds me of?
Oh, who?
He kind of reminds me of Richie from The Bear. He seems like someone who...
I've never seen it.
You've
Don't
never
kill
seen
me.
The Bear? Okay,
Don't
so
kill me.
Richie's a character that is very... he's very traditional, right? He loves the way that life, like the maybe older version of life. I don't know, like the simpler life kind
the
of.
old way of living.
But he seems like the guy who would show up to a Christmas and be like, "Hey, I played in the Premier League once," and he'd be like, "Yeah, right. This guy couldn't do it." He's like, "No, I actually scored like 50 goals in the Premier League," like that kind of vibe, right? Where he just show up at a Christmas and casually just be like, "Yeah, I played in the Premier League."
Whatever. I used to back in my day play in the EPL.
Yeah, I don't know.
But yeah, I don't know. I just really like that that run of fixtures for what are we talking about?
Dwight McNeil.
For Dwight McNeil for Everton. I
And-
mean, it seems like he was scoring goals against better teams, I'd say, than the run of fixtures. So especially the Ipswich and Southampton matches, I feel like those could be matches where he really gets some good returns for all his owners.
I do like Dwight McNeil as a shout a lot. And he's someone who we've talked about on the podcast a couple of times where it seems like if he gets an opportunity on goal, he's someone that's really clinical in the chances he does get. Or it's either going 50 yards over the goalpost, right?
Yeah, that's a very fair
Either
possibility.
it's going right to the top corner, or it's not going to be anywhere close at all. But he's someone that has gained popularity in the FPL community, and to me, it makes sense. He's one of those picks. I don't know what his ownership currently is, but I really do like him as an asset, and I think that's a great shout to suggest him for my team, Paul, because he's someone that I did think about previously bringing into my team.
And I think another thing about McNeil too, I'll give you just a little 30 more seconds. But basically, I think he has the ability to have massive game weeks. Like I think he's the kind of asset in your team that can kind of take away points, getting an assist here, maybe an assist there. But he also has the ability to have a hat trick too.
On top of that, though, he does. I feel like it's either a massive points haul or it's going to be a blank. It's going to be 2 points. It's going to be 1 point.
Oh,
He does
so
have
we disagree
the
then.
yellow card in him, but if you look at his points total throughout the course of the season, through the 7-game week so far, it goes 2 points, 2 points, 6 points, 12 points, 2 points, 15, and then back to 2. So he's one of those players. I think you're better off if you know you're going to play him every week and just ride out those low point totals. And then if you do get that haul, then it evens out, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's someone I have thought about in the past, so I think it's a great shout for you to pick that for my team, and I will definitely take that into consideration for my transfers.
Yeah, that's all I can ask, Luke.
Yeah, no, of course. I guess at this point we will pivot to what I recommend for your team.
Mm-hmm.
I took a bit of a longer perspective, so 2 game weeks instead of 1, on your team.
Yeah.
And what I did for game week 8 is I took Saka out of your team.
What?
And brought in Son.
No.
Just listen.
Okay.
Spurs have a really good run of fixtures. Son's going to be coming back. From everything that I've heard, he's going to be playing in game week 8.
That's what everything seems to point in that direction.
Yes. And I think one thing that we see here, right? Timo Werner has had an incredible amount of chances to score goals.
That's a great point. Yep.
While Son has been out. Everyone keeps talking about how Son is playing so wide and not overly involved in the play. But if Son would have been playing since he's been out, which I think it was probably he's been out since game week 5, maybe 6. I can't remember.
I don't know
but
exactly.
If he was back for those 2 to 3 weeks, he would have had a massive haul during that time.
That's true.
And the fixtures coming up do say Son is someone who could have a major haul on him as well. So that's my recommendation. I think Son is a great pick to bring in you could leave him in your team for the next 6 to 7 weeks, right? He has dropped in price too, towards only 9.8, which makes him even more appealing because you get that one return from him. He's probably going to shoot back up to 10 pretty quick because a lot of people will be scrounging to get him into their teams.
Yeah.
And finding ways.
The biggest thing I have about that, Luke, is that if I can forgive him for missing that chance against City last year in the run-in.
Well, you're just going to have to because
I'm going to have to find it myself if I'm going to make that transfer.
He's a great asset to have, in my opinion. Fair enough. That takes you into game week 8. My recommended captaincy for your team for game week 8, since you don't have Haaland.
Yes, sir.
That makes it a little tricky.
No, it doesn't.
Someone who maybe Havertz is a good captaincy. I think but Bournemouth is tricky. I don't know if that's a great fixture. He did return there last year when they played away at Bournemouth on the South Coast, but I don't know if it's going to be a great. I just worry, right? Does Saka play? Maybe he doesn't. We don't know what the injury was. Havertz was potentially injured. He didn't go to international duty.
Martinelli possibly injured.
There's a lot of variables up in the air at the moment.
Timber injured, maybe.
There's a lot going on.
Ben White.
So, with that being said, I think Salah could be a good potential pick as well. He's playing Chelsea at home.
That's honestly, I really like. I think
Salah feels primed to have a 15-pointer, in my opinion. That's just what my gut tells me, but we'll see what happens. Cole Palmer could do the same, though. Okay, so going to game week 9 for what I'm recommending for your team. I'm recommending 3 transfers for a -4. You'd be taking a points hit if you did this, but you'd be bringing in 8 Nori for Calafiori. You'd be bringing in Brian Mbomo for Eze, and you'd also be bringing in Calvert-Lewin for Havertz. That would leave you $3.4 million in the bank, so you'd have flexibility here about changing any of these players out, but you get in on Wolves' incredible run that starts in game week 9. You get Mbomo in for Ipswich at home, which feels prime for a massive return, hopefully, fingers crossed, being an Mbomo owner myself. And then you get Calvert-Lewin for another piece of their really good run of fixtures that keep going. And it's good because I think we're kind of on similar thoughts here because, you recommended an Everton player. I recommended an Everton player. So maybe you'll be open to this idea of bringing in DCL.
Yeah.
And we know DCL's on pins too as well. So those are my recommended transfers. I think it sets your team up to have not only a good couple of weeks for 8 and 9, but also for the long run to hope even past game week 12.
Yeah, and I really like those transfers, Luke, especially in Bomo. He is an FPL asset that I love. Like, honestly, it's probably him, Bowen, Saka, Havertz are all players that I kind of want in my team consistently for as much as possible. And Eze, I'm not gonna lie, Eze was on that list going into this year. Like, he was really good to me last year in FPL. He's been very disappointing. So, but I don't know, I have a sneaky weird feeling about um about Eze next week.
You've been saying that for a couple weeks now.
I know it may just be me, what is it, rationalizing and holding on to that, but I mean,
I think so.
playing Nottingham Forest, which I know Nottingham Forest have been better from in defense this year, and they've really put together a better squad and everything. But there's something about as a I don't know. I just feel something about it.
So this brings up an interesting point we can kind of talk about a little bit here. When do you think it's good to cut a player who has great underlying numbers? Because there's been a huge debate in the FPL community as of late around Eze, around Bruno Fernandes, other similar players. Trying to think. Those two are the first that really come to mind, right? They have great underlying numbers, but they're not returning the way that we would hope or expect them to, especially what the numbers indicate should be happening. So when do you cut your losses?
So I have a great answer for you, Luke. I think it's all dependent on the eye test. Like with Eze, I think I am rationalizing and I am kind of like stretching to the point of like I just kind of want to keep him in my team to kind of maybe save a transfer or just holding on to the idea of maybe what I thought Eze was going into the season. But the eye test, I mean, in the first 5 game weeks, the XG numbers weren't lying. Like he had a lot of those chances and they should have been converted. Like, I mean, he had that goal in the first match week that should have been a goal and was like mysteriously just called off because the free kick was blown dead while the ball was in the air. But then there's been a couple times he's been off the post. He hasn't converted chances that he should have. So, I mean, I think the numbers were not lying that he should have been scoring these goals or getting these assists. But at this point, we're seeing that Crystal Palace probably is not the team that we really expected them to be without Elise. So deep down, I probably know I should move off him, but I'll probably give it one more week.
The thing about Eze, right? Just purely looking at the very basic, how many points has he scored in FPL? His point totals weekly go 2, 2, 10, 2, 3, 2, 2.
Yeah, it's bad.
That comes down to an average of 3.3 points per week, and he'd be averaging, like 2.5 if it wasn't for that 1 week where he got a goal against Chelsea. Mm-hmm. And the underlying numbers say that he should have about 3.5 goal involvement, but they're just not happening. And Bruno Fernandes is the same way too. He's been really unfortunate. He got a red card for maybe an action that maybe shouldn't have been worthy of a red card. That's up to your own interpretation. We're not going to dive into that too much. Yeah. But he's always in those similar positions to Eze where he's creating chances. He has really good high XG opportunities. The first game week, he should have had a hat trick.
When I owned him.
He had multiple one-on-ones with the goalkeeper and just couldn't find the back of the net. But at what point do you say, I can't risk it? Because there's so many good options out there. That's the thing about this.
That's a great point.
That's what you have to keep reminding yourself is even if you do think a player is going to come good, maybe you take them out, they get a goal that next week, bring them right back into your team, but don't sit too long because that's really what's hurting you. And that's what's hurt my season up to this point as well.
Phil
Foden, exactly. That's the point I'm talking about. At this point, he's playing again. Right, he's back in pretty good match fitness from what I can tell.
You easily could have brought him in last week, though.
I know, right?
But I mean that's the thing. You're exactly right. It's really hard to make those decisions. So I think it's good that we're talking about.
And if I do, to be fair, back in game week 4 or 5, I thought he was going to be starting week in, week out. So going into game week 8 now, I feel like he's going to be starting from this point on. And should be fit enough to do that and play 90 minutes. Maybe I'm wrong, but at this point, with the run the fixtures that City has, I can't take him out of my team and feel okay about that.
Mm-hmm.
because at the moment I'm tripled up on City with Rico Lewis, Phil Foden, and Haaland, and I'm not going to move away from them with the fixtures they have coming.
Yeah, I think those are all great points to bring up, Luke. And it is really good to like dive into the mindset of how do I know when to move off a certain asset that I have believed in, but I'm starting to not believe in, because I mean that's one of the bigger questions as an FPL manager. So I really like that you
Yeah.
brought that up, and I think we just did a good job articulating some
Uh,
thoughts behind that too.
Another question that I have for you as well. We kind of mentioned this very, very briefly. How do you feel about not having Haaland in your team? Like, all bias removed, purely as an FPL manager, does it scare you not having him? Or are you more so resigned to there's a possibility of he'll haul, but you're okay with that?
Okay, this is solely answering as an FPL manager. There's no other hats I'm wearing. There's nothing else. It's just me as an FPL manager. I am shaking in a corner, terrified about this coming game week. Them playing City playing Wolves. Oh no.
What do you
Oh no.
what do you think his effective ownership is going to be?
Oh, probably at least 160.
I'd say 150, 160 is a very
Yeah,
safe
yeah.
bet.
So if Haaland gets, so this is the thing. If Haaland somehow manages to not score, I don't want to jinx this. I'm not whatever. This would be the fourth week in a row that I have not been burned by not having Haaland in my team, which would be absolutely exceptional actually after the start of a season, which I will say I did not think that was attainable, like sustainable long term. To have hat tricks every week is not possible. For him to score 1 to 2 every week, yes, that is possible. But to have hat tricks every week, no, I don't think so.
I think on that, right? One quick note is Rodri being out is really kind of damaging him,
Yeah.
and I think having KDB out is really what's limiting him because he's just not getting chances right now, right? That's the big thing. Is Haaland was in good form, he was finishing his chances, but now he's just not getting the chances.
Yeah, and you know who they could really use right now that they sold 2 years ago?
Who's that?
The cold boy in London. It's a little chilly, you know?
Rat Boy Summer, baby.
Rat boy summer. Yeah, but I mean, looking at that, I mean, it's just a situation where I'm just going to have to hope. I mean, Haaland will be coming back in my team eventually. It's just right now not manageable. So I'm going to have to just hope that he doesn't haul, which he easily could. And I would be in a bad position. So
I think looking at your FPL team, like I did just now, kind of, before the pod and getting ready to kind of make your transfers and have some recommendations, I was getting ghost pain for your team for the potential of a Haaland hat trick because, as you're saying, that would be scary to me. His ownership is high, but it's also just the threat of him scoring goals against Wolves. They have not looked good. A little shambolic at the back. They've been a little unfortunate with their XG conceded and the amount of goals they've actually conceded. There's a big variance there. But at the same time, whenever it rains, it pours. And it feels like Wolves are in that stretch where nothing's going their way right now. Just a really unlucky team. Gary O'Neill's a really good manager, I think. He'll figure it out, but they also did have probably the toughest opening fixtures in the league.
Yeah, they had a really rough run of fixtures, but I'm just really hoping, Luke, that Haaland comes out in in a Norway kit because he wouldn't score in that.
Well, that's possible. Yeah,
I mean, he just wouldn't. Like that'd be great.
No, that would work out really well for you if that happened. Yeah. Well, I just wanted to kind of pick your brain there, kind of hear what you thought about
Yeah, I think it's a
where
good
you're
question.
sitting at with that. But what we'll probably do is take a little break and come back and answer some of your questions that you all have asked of us on Twitter, and kind of close out our thoughts on coming up Game Week 8. So come right back.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Top Ends with Twins. We were just outside fighting a hurricane, and we're back inside, so we're good to go. Everything's all right. And Luke is going to kind of throw some stats out there for us to just kind of get that math number part of your brain moving a little bit on this podcast.
Let's look at the data. So an interesting stat here from this stat, these XG stats are pulled from understat.com. Every site's going to pull XG a little bit differently, but for consistency's sake, if you want a comparison, look at this website as I'm kind of talking through this. over the last 4 game weeks, so since the first international break, Erling Haaland has not been in the top 12 for XG within the Premier League.
Please, 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 please,
For
please, please,
XG.
please, please, please.
How crazy is that? Like I'm saying, he's just not getting the chances in the first place. Who do you think is leading the league in XG over the last 4 game weeks, Paul?
For the last 4 game weeks? It's not Cole Palmer. It's not Salah.
One more guess.
No, those weren't guesses. That was just me thinking. I'm gonna go with Saka.
Nope. Saka is not even on the top 12 of this list either.
God damn it.
Dominic Solanke is top of the list.
He's interesting.
Gotten an XG of 4.07 with 2 goals. So very much so underperforming that XG. Next on the list is Watkins, and then Havertz right underneath that.
How should I guess King Guy?
Yeah. So interesting notes there. As far as XA goes over the last 4 game weeks, Saka does lead XA. So expected assist, he's leading the league in that, creating a lot. He's at the heart of everything that Arsenal are doing. And that is easy to see from a statistical perspective, but also just from the eye test when you watch Arsenal play.
Yeah, those corners, man.
Second on the list, kind of surprisingly, is Alex Iwobi. He has 1 assist over the last 4 game weeks, but he has an XA of 2.29. And then it's Cole Palmer right after that with an XA of 2.26 with 5 goals and 1 assist. Cole Palmer's numbers are absolutely insane.
Well, I mean,
it's
to
crazy.
Me, a little pushback against Cole Palmer.
Okay.
Real quick, before we do anything else. He has 2 good weeks this year. 2.
Yeah.
That's about it.
But those have been massive weeks.
I mean, I get it.
You get a 25-pointer. If you captain him for that 25-pointer and get 50 points.
I understand where you're coming from.
GG's on that, because that is very well played and plot and server did. And Cole Palmer is a player. He's a great Premier League player. Is he the best player in the league, like some people are arguing? I don't think so. But he's a great Premier League player. Definitely can be the spearhead of attack.
I'm not disagreeing with you about that. I'm just saying that I think the whole point about that is that if you want to own Cole Palmer, he is a long hold. Basically,
Agreed.
right?
You leave him in your team, and
he's not a player that you bring in week to week, because it seems a lot like you could get a 2-pointer or a 25-pointer. So just hold him in your team if you have him.
Chelsea's fixtures do switch around game week 12. Keep an eye on that. A lot of people will be bringing him in for game week 12.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Another XA note that I want to have here that is a little interesting is Leif Davis over the last 4 game weeks ranks 5th overall for XA. He did not manage to get an assist during that time, but something to keep an eye on. And Ipswich have a really good run as well. So, those are the statistics I wanted to bring up here in the pod. Take them for what you want. Obviously, with expected stats, there's a little variance in there. Keep that in mind whenever you are using them, but it does help inform our decisions as FPL managers. So,
absolutely good things.
With that, let's move into one of our listeners' questions that they had for the podcast. So we put out on Twitter that we were going to be fielding any questions for the pod, and we had a question asked. So the question was, let's see, let me pull it up. Paul, do you have it pulled up there? Paul, go ahead and read it off.
So it's basically the question is asking who would be the best João Pedro replacement in your team.
And that's coming from Football Forecaster FPL.
Yeah, so thank you for the question.
Yeah.
Do you want to go first or you want me to go first?
Paul, you go first.
So this is basically fixture dependent, of course, as everything we do as FPL managers. But I think one of the best things you could do is bringing in Delap for Ipswich.
Ooh, I do like that. Okay, tell me more.
I think he's putting in chances that maybe are lying against XG. Like, he's doing a lot of solo stuff. But, I mean, if we look at their run going forward, they play Everton, Brentford, Leicester, like in the next 3, and I think that's an easy João Pedro replacement. Because I mean João Pedro, it just seems like since he's been out, do you know when he's returning? Do we have an estimated return date, or is he back?
Keep going. I'll let you know.
Not sure about that. I'm not up to date on the João Pedro news exactly, but also a good pivot too. I think this is like kind of A or B, or not even A or B, just like 1A, 1B is also Dominic Callen DCL, like Luke said. I think him and Delap both are great options to go to, and both kind of provide situations where they're more alone up top, and these teams aren't playing in a kind of as progressive a manner. Like it's not going to be like Haaland or Watkins or in those situations, but like still both great options that can provide goals for your team on any given week, really, and at a lower price point too.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love the Delap shout. I think that was my favorite one out of that because he's someone I was a little early on, was excited about him, didn't end up making the transfer, and then he goes and gets a brace and scores a goal in the next match as well. So that kind of shows like it's good to just trust your gut. And what my gut is saying here is that Strand Larson is a good pick. You don't have to clear any funds. João Pedro's at 5.5, Strand Larson's at 5.5 as Wolves' starting striker. Their fixtures are about to flip. My recommendation there, if you're going to go with Strand Larson, just maybe wait the week.
Yeah,
It's easy
like
that João Pedro could drop in price and you get priced out of making a clean swap over with 5.5 to 5.5. But if you can wait it out, or if not, just go ahead and make the transfer now. Bring him in and just bench him for City. Don't play him if you have the players that can play in his place. But he's going to be a great player to have, I think, getting into that Wolves attack as they move into these really nice fixtures. So someone to keep an eye on. I think that's an easy move. And I do like the DCL shout as well. If you can make some funds up, perhaps you have Slaw on your team. Slaw might be someone who's good to make way. Perhaps this week, maybe the week after. But if you can drop Salah down to, let's say, someone like Mbomo, if you don't have them, or Johnson, you don't have them, that gives you a lot of budget to work with. And in that situation, if you go from Salah down to Johnson, for example, I think you could still almost get
so much money.
You could almost get to Watkins at that point.
Yeah,
if that's someone who interests you, if you don't already have them in their team. So that's my recommendation. Go with Strand Larson. If not, if you have a little bit more budget, maybe DCL, or just drop Salah down and then go from there. So best of luck with that transfer. But thank you so much for asking the question. We really appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
So let us know what you think about that. Paul, you have a question for me. So
I do.
Ahead.
So I think we're going to kind of close the podcast, or just kind of wrap up a little bit on some asking each other a couple questions, just to kind of, if there's stuff we haven't talked about, to give some of the listeners just a different way to think about things, or just different opinions on stuff. But Luke, my question for you, we discussed my non-Haaland ownership. And of course, like I said, only with my FPL hat on, I'm shaking in a corner, pretty scared. What player has you in that position right now? Looking at the FPL landscape, what player do you think scares you the most that you don't have in your team?
The player that scares me the most, last week it was definitely Saka. I knew that was a fixture against Southampton that he could haul, and he did. Especially getting the late goal, that felt like that was when the knife really went into my heart. Like I could see the potential green arrow really shrinking whenever that happened.
I think we should one time live stream us watching Premier League matches, because there's moments sometimes where we'll be watching matches, and of course I'm an Arsenal fan. That's who I'm supporting, and there's moments where like I'll be celebrating a Saka goal and Luke will be like, fuck, what the fuck? And I wish we just had videos, or sometimes when Luke's celebrating something that Arsenal does bad, I'm literally looking at him like, where's the nearest knife? Like it would be cinema for us to live stream that.
Great idea, Paul. To come soon. Be on the lookout for that, everyone.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah, so Saka is one of those players that definitely scares me week in, week out, not having him. On top of that, I think Cole Palmer is one too, because he's intricately important to everything that Chelsea do. And if something good happens, he's going to be at the heart of either getting an assist. And the hope really at this point for me is that he has the hockey assist, where he makes the pass before the assist and then avoids the points there, because it seems like he's going to return almost every week with how he plays for them. And I know there's going to be a week coming up soon sometime where Chelsea just look horrible, and then he's going to get a penalty in the 89th minute, because that's how it goes. But
Yeah. Which, while we're talking about Chelsea, I don't want to cut you off, but
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
I really think if we could see Jadon Sancho start to get like up to like 80 minutes a match, maybe 90 consistently, and we don't have to worry about the rotation as much, I think he could end up being a really good FPL asset
He could be, yeah.
in this Chelsea
Yeah.
attack. And if he starts finding the back of the net, just watch out
He's
for
looking better, and we know he's an incredibly
that.
creative
He's a
player.
talent. Yeah.
He is very talented, so I'm happy to see it working for him, because when you see a young player go to a big club like Manchester United and it just doesn't work, you want to see it click somewhere else. And it seems like he's kind of found his joy again in football, which is nice.
Yeah, we love a redemption arc, you know.
We do. Turning the question back to you, Paul, who is the player that you fear not having in your FPL team? But the answer cannot be Erling Haaland.
Well, shoot. I think your recommended transfer of Son. I think their run of fixtures going forward, and especially to your point about the chances and positions that Timo Werner has been in, I think Son coming back into that attack, if they can kind of get over the hangover. I know they've had an international break and everything to get over the Brighton match. If they can bounce back from that, I think Son's going to be in a lot of really dangerous positions. And there's going to be weeks where he could have hat tricks. He could have 2 assists. Like he seems like he's kind of prime, especially if he's been resting and he's like rearing ready to get back into this Spurs team. He scares me a lot.
I like that. He's someone that I know I'm not going to have, because I already have 2 Spurs attackers. I'm not going to go for a third. But I could see him stealing the points from my Solanke and Johnson picks, right? So it's something that's in the back of my mind, but it is just what it is. Now, my question to you, Paul. What team has surprised you up to this point from an FPL perspective or from a Premier League perspective in the season so far?
Surprised me the most. Honestly, I think Fulham.
Okay, tell me more.
I think Fulham have just been better, especially like I kind of mentioned earlier about Joplin being sent off and being sold. Like he was the anchor point for their whole team essentially. Like he like stopped a lot of chances. He helped them create. He was good on corners for them.
Now he's riding the bench at Bayern Munich.
Yeah, I mean that's just part of it. I mean he's probably making just life-changing money for him and his family. So I can't ever fault a move like that for a player. And he's been wanting to go there for a while now too. So I get that. But Fulham really bounced back. I mean, and I think the thing this year is that they have more depth. I mean, like you can bring Reece Nelson off. You can put, like last year they probably would have had to have Smith Rowe play every match. And like he's probably just not in a point physically where he can play 90 minutes every match because he's just not used to that.
Right.
So it's good to see that they're like basically building people into the squad. But the attacking options they have are really exciting. Their midfield seems to be solidifying a little bit. And I love the signing of Anderson. Like bringing him from Crystal Palace, I think that's one of the biggest things that Crystal Palace really like. Not having Elise Tucks, but losing your like basically the figurehead of your defense is really, really difficult to manage.
I think they've brought in, I think LaCroix is a good center back. Chris Richards, we know, is a good center back. Gahey has been a little suspect at times this season, and maybe they would have been better off just wholesaling and getting rid of him this year, because it seems like his value could potentially drop a little bit.
Yeah.
Anderson is a really good signing for them, though. I think that's an important note to make, because he provides solidity in the air, and he's also pretty good at the ball with the ball at his feet too.
He's kind of a commanding presence too, you know. Like
he is. Definitely so. Fulham needed that, I think, in the back line as well.
But
it's a good way to replace him.
Flip that question to you and see what you have to say.
There's a lot of different ways to take this. I think, for one, Liverpool have impressed me with how solid they've been at the back.
Yeah, that's a good point.
They have conceded the lowest XG of any team by a pretty sizable amount. Their XG conceded is 5.32, and the next closest is 7.37 with Fulham, of all teams.
Hey.
And
you know,
Arsenal is 4 teams behind Liverpool at the moment in XG conceded, which is very surprising for a lot of people.
I mean, we don't even have to bring it up, Luke, but the red cards, that's all I have to say. Like, literally.
But they've been conceding more chances than they have last season. That's the biggest thing to me, is they are conceding more shots, more chances, and when that happens, goals are going to go in. Look at City. They concede the odd chance here and there, but it's how they concede their chances that make them. And maybe
And
they
then you also
don't have
Patterson.
too great of a keeper.
Yeah.
But, we won't talk about that right
Yeah.
now. Another team that's really impressed me, as I've talked about on the podcast, is Tottenham. I think attacking, they've looked really good. Ange made a change to where he just brought in pretty much one holding midfielder, and he's using Kulusevski and Madison to attack from the midfield. And I really like that change. I think Tottenham are going to benefit from that in the long run. The match against Brighton did not bode well for that, though. They looked a little out of sorts, and the individual mistakes at the back were inexcusable. Just, it can't happen. Another team that surprised
pack
me.
your bags, you doggy.
It was bad.
Pack those bags.
That's one of those mistakes that you make as a defender, and that sets the tone for the rest of the match, right?
Oh, yeah.
If he just
tough.
kicks that ball out back and they get a corner, it could have ended up being Spurs 3 or 4-0.
If he does anything with it besides what he did,
Yeah.
or put it in the back of the net, like anything.
It was a bad display in the moment, but
Moments happen.
Everyone has mistakes in them.
Moments
right?
happen.
Another team that's really impressed me, and this, not impressed, right? Impressed is the wrong word. That has not impressed me is Ipswich. I thought they were going to be a lot better. They've had moments. They're getting some points here and there. They're up to a total of 4 points at this point in the season. But I really thought that they'd be a little more adaptable and resilient when playing Premier League teams. The result against West Ham was really when I was like, I'm not sure how this is going to go for them this season. So we'll keep an eye on Ipswich, but they're just conceding far too many chances, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think there's life there. There's a possibility that they could kind of figure it out maybe, but we'll just have to see,
We will.
I mean, the margins are so thin whenever you're near the bottom. So just need a couple results here and there, and things can flip very quickly.
That's so true.
But look, I want to add one more team to this that I feel like we would be remiss not to mention. Is Chelsea sitting at 4th in the table?
Yeah.
Like
no,
I mean, we knew that they had an army of like players to pick from going into the season. But I mean, with the new head coach, with a whole new system coming in, there's a lot of question marks,
And also the turmoil behind the scenes as well.
Oh, yeah.
With the ownership debacle of different groups vying for power and wanting to kick. There's a lot going on there. And you do have to applaud the players for amongst everything that's going on, they're just going out on the pitch and they're playing. And they're performing, which is, you want to see players succeed, right? And as of now, Chelsea are doing a good job of getting results.
Yeah, and the thing about Chelsea too that's really strange about it is that, like, I mean, if you look at this Chelsea team, I mean, I think they're missing, a large part of their team in Reece James, which he may always be missing. Who knows what's going to happen with Reece James, but would absolutely love to see Reece James get healthy. Apparently, he's back in training, from what I've seen on Twitter. So I don't know. I think if Reece James gets healthy and they kind of like put the pieces together a little more, I mean, it could just be an early good run for them. But I mean, there's life there at Chelsea, which is something we couldn't have said a year ago.
I did think things were going to change, right? There was no way it was going to continue the way it was the last couple of seasons, where it's just been entirely chaotic. Pochettino tried to do the best he could, but like we're seeing, I think there were a lot of internal factors that did not let that happen. But as you were saying, it is good to. I mean, Chelsea's doing
table,
good, right? Fourth in the table, something to keep an eye on. Maybe they push for Champions League spot this season. Maybe even keep pushing up the table and, push City, Arsenal. We never know what's going to happen, which is exciting, right? We want as many teams as possible competing for the title. That makes it more exciting, and it really provides, just extra drama, which the Premier League just absolutely loves. So,
well, I mean, you can have that opinion, but we would just prefer for one team to be in the title race, and we know who that is.
We know that you will live and die by the Gunners, Paul. So,
yeah,
important matches coming up in Game Week 8 that I think we should we're just going to very briefly touch on this, and then we'll get out of here for the night. We've got Tottenham opening the weekend, West Ham at home. I think that's
the first match is scary, though.
Here's the thing. I think Solanke could be a captaincy option.
I really do. You said the last 4 game weeks he's led the Premier League in XG, so
I really think Solanke's an option there, and he might even be on penalties. We don't know.
Depends on if Son's back.
I will be wrestling with the thought of captaining Solanke going into Game Week 8. Other fixtures I think are interesting. We've got Arsenal going away to Bournemouth. That was something you talked about, Paul. And then we've got on Sunday we've got Wolves hosting Man City and Liverpool playing Chelsea.
Oh God, oh God, oh God.
Yeah, that's gonna be you're gonna be sitting behind the couch on that one, I think, Paul. I fear.
Yeah, but I'm locked in for the Liverpool Chelsea match. Just as like
that's gonna be a fun
as a
match.
Premier League fan,
It's gonna be so much fun.
that one's gonna be good. I think we could see some of those shades of like a couple years ago, the Liverpool Chelsea matches where they're just up and down,
Yeah,
cagey affairs. Which different coaches now, different systems.
I would
But
love to see.
I think we could see some real fun stuff happening.
I would love to see Trent get a goal in that match after he did on international duty. That was a beautiful free kick he had. It was.
I would not love to see that. But
I would. Fingers crossed. But yeah, so those are the fixtures that we thought would be really interesting. All the fixtures look good this weekend, to be honest. Just a few we wanted to spotlight a little bit there. Any final thoughts for our listeners, Paul?
I think I usually go with the same ending notes, so I'm just gonna probably keep it at that. Maybe I'll drift somewhere else with it, but just play the game that you want to play. I really think that we get too bogged down and maybe like listening to what Twitter says you should do or Reddit or like all these different things. And at the end of the day, it's your FPL team. You make the choices. If you want to bring in a player that maybe Twitter doesn't like because of some numbers or like a eye test kind of thing, just play the game how you want to play. Because I mean, I think what's the fun in like following a set blueprint that isn't what you want to do? I mean, it's your team. Play it how you want, you know?
On top of that, I think another good piece of advice that kind of piggybacks off of yours is I would advise everyone to be careful how much content you're consuming for FPL.
Besides Top Men's Twins, that you can.
Yes, we're we're a weekly listen. As soon as the pod comes out, download, listen, subscribe, rate and review, all those. You know how it goes.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say though is we get to a point where we hear a million different opinions. We have all this statistical analysis available at our fingertips through Twitter, through Reddit. But sometimes it's best if we narrow that vision down and only focus on some key categories that help make our decisions. I find myself in this position sometimes where I'm looking a million different places, trying to find the best stats, best analysis to help inform my decisions. But sometimes it's better if I just keep it simple, look at a few things week in, week out, and listen to the podcasts that I like, right? Have 2 or 3 that you really kind of follow. And then go from there and trust your gut. As Paul's saying, trust that gut and really believe in what comes to your mind whenever you're thinking about your FPL team. When that happens, the best thing in the long run is, if nothing else, you're learning to be better as an FPL manager. You're not as reliant upon other people telling you what to do with your team.
You can teach a man to fish.
Exactly.
A person to fish.
And on that note, we're going to close out the podcast.
All right. Well, thanks for spending some time with us again, everybody. It's really good to be back. So, yeah, we look forward to the next time.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and have a great rest of your day, evening, morning, whatever it may be. Thanks for joining us today.
Bye, everybody.